You were saying don't confuse velocity with acceleration. What does that mean?
I just meant, you know, the ISM numbers, the purchasing manager numbers are still positive, which means factories are still making more stuff. It's just the acceleration has slowed down. So there's not as much more, which you and I always talk about, but probably the first derivative actually. But it's you know, the rate of increase is slowing, but it is still an increase. So that's we wouldn't want to be too negative about that.
No, and one of your key themes, and I'm fascinated by this, companies that help other companies operate more efficiently. Why don't you explain to the viewers? You've written about it, but why don't you explain to the viewers what you mean?
Sure. I mean, at a time when, you know, margins are pretty, you know, near record highs, when, you know, labor costs aren't particularly important, but earnings are tough to come by, companies are looking for ways they can do business more cheaply. So one of the things I might want to do as a business is sell, you know, Bloomberg equipment that you're not going to make yourself, that you can buy more cheaply from me than by trying to source it independently, because I'm selling it to you and your competitors and everybody else.
And what sectors?
Well, you know, it cuts across. I mean, a lot of them are basic industries. I mean, we've written on the Oppenheimer Fund's website about a Dutch plumbing supply company. It's not really, they don't do plungers and wrenches. What they do is high pressure gauges and industrial plumbing equipment that critically important for manufacturing, but they can provide it to lots of manufacturers cheaper than those manufacturers can source it themselves. I talk about coffee cups. You know, the coffee cups you use here, which of course we always recycle or compost or whatever. We do. You know, you don't go find those. You have somebody who makes a decent amount of money by selling them to you. That's what I really mean. Companies that aren't so visible, aren't household names, that help other companies do their business more cheaply, protect their margins.
What's curious to me is the first example you gave us, right, a Dutch company. In other words, you might actually have to look far afield. These are not household names we're talking about.
They're not household names. You don't even ask me to remember the name of this company, even though we've written it on our website so I can talk about it. But, you know, you're going to have to look around the world because they might be in surprising places. You know,
does it matter who they wind up selling to? I mean, do you want a company that's going to sell more to, say, the U.S. or to China?
Alex, that's actually the really critical question. You want to look not where the company's located, but where their customers are located. So I really, if I'm analyzing a company, I want to look at the source of their revenues. I want to look at the source of their sales. Are they selling into growing markets or declining markets? And that's really the critical question.
So you do want the exposure to China and emerging markets?
You want it to, well, emerging growth or the United States, where obviously there's, at whatever pace, there's a resurgence in manufacturing. You want someone who's selling into those drillers and machine
You're giving me an idea for a screen, for a stock screen. Just go where the growth is. Which regions are growing the most?
Well, you know, right now, the region that's growing the most is the good old U.S. of A., and that really does mean parts of North...
Which doesn't say a lot, does it?
What about
all right,
China?
So China's going to be 7.5%. So again, it's velocity and acceleration. You know, the U.S. is, I think, improving. I mean, we can talk about all this Fed talk that's out there. The U.S. actually is improving. So in terms of rate of change, we are improving. China is slowing, stabilizing, although definitely their rate of growth.
And Brazil is slowing, and South Africa is slowing. I mean, the BRICS traditionally.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. You know, India, sometimes the news is good, sometimes the news is bad. There are other areas in Latin America. You know, Mexico is a good story. There's growth in Mexico. Some of that is when we talk about manufacturing coming back to North America, a lot of that really means Mexico. So there's a good growth story. Peru, good growth story.
And once again, you are looking far afield, which means people need to be creative. ADRs, ETFs, is that the way you play it, or individual stocks in a Peru or in a Poland or wherever?
You know, one of the things I learned in political science is where you stand depends on where you sit. So I work for an actively managed, well, you get it, right?
Yeah,
I work for an active manager of mutual funds. We think we add a lot of value by picking stocks. That leads me to think people can add value themselves or using an advisor like ourselves to pick stocks.
So you're telling me go buy an Oppenheimer fund.
Well, I'm just telling you that when stocks stocks are not fully valued. When they get more fully valued, selectivity matters more. In this environment, selectivity matters more.
Do you think the CapEx is slowing globally?
I think actually it looks like it's picking up a little bit in the U.S. One of the bright spots in the fourth quarter GDP numbers was in fact CapEx. I think you're going to see that continue in durable goods. You know, China is shifting where it's investing from manufacturing for export to domestic goods and services. So I think we're seeing a shift. But there's been a slow. You know, companies have been very slow to invest. At some point, those unused dollars get invested to meet demand for expansion.